10 entries, 6 levels. Some start with petty arguments and family drama. But the deeper we go, the more we uncover stories that twist into horrifying confessions of manipulation, cruelty, and secrets that never should have been shared. Consider this your warning. We'll start at the tip of the iceberg. Level 1. A cold resting place. We had a cherished and beloved cat that just got too old and had to be put down at the vet. We have a pet cemetery in our backyard where our past deceased pets are buried and want to bury our cat here. He died during wintertime and the ground was frozen, couldn't dig a hole with a shovel. Our solution? Put the cat in the freezer for a few months until ground thaw in spring. The vet double-bagged our cat, placed him in a cardboard coffin, and so it went into our freezer. Weeks later, that decision came back to haunt OP and her husband. Not with illness, but with something far more unsettling, turning an ordinary dinner into a moment no one at the table would ever forget. We had friends over, and after dinner we stood around the kitchen island when the idea of ice cream and dessert came up. I opened up the freezer to grab that when one of our friends noticed the cardboard coffin on a shelf with our pet's name written on it in marker. Questions were asked, and I admitted that our cat was in the freezer awaiting burial and explained everything about the ground being too frozen. One of our friends who was eating at the moment dropped his fork and looked like he was going to be sick. There was a debate. Wife and I couldn't see what the big deal was. Cat was double-bagged, so nothing could cross-contaminate food. He wasn't even visible, just the box. I said it's no different than keeping meat or animal parts in the freezer. Macabre, yes, but unsanitary? We certainly disagree. OP and her husband understood that not everyone would see their point of view, so they offered their apologies to their guest. They hoped they could just return to the fun evening they were having, but it didn't end there. It looked like his meal was ruined. He was visibly disgusted, carried on excessively, and couldn't believe he just ate food stored where a corpse was. We tried to reassure him that the cat never touched anything food-related and was sealed behind plastic. He began saying, "Our kitchen isn't clean," and that's where I lost my cool. I was pissed. He said our house is dirty and was angry he made a scene in front of other guests with his claims that our contaminated house is unfit to dine at. I said he doesn't have to eat here if he doesn't want to, and reassured everybody we follow sanitary practices, even more so when guests are coming over. We were offended by his public scene, which embarrassed us, and wished he had exercised a bit of restraint. I was angry and went outside to cool off. We aren't dirty people, and I cleaned for hours before company arrived, only to have our home criticized like this. When I returned, this friend had left. I apologized for the scene, and the rest of the evening continued as normal. We disagree with cremation, and a freezer was the only place for him to go while awaiting burial. We never abandoned the body at the vet's office. I felt our friend was okay to ask questions, but carrying on excessively, making a scene, and then insulting us in our home crossed a line. Even trying to see it from his point of view, I don't understand how it's unsanitary. We ate from the freezer for weeks and never were sick. I don't think I'm in the wrong, but I may have overreacted in anger when I rebutted him and left to cool off. We haven't spoken to this friend in weeks. Seems like a delicate situation, and wondering for peace of mind what you all would have done. Am I the asshole? The Reddit thread quickly split between those who thought OP's logic made sense and those who couldn't get past the unsettling and gross image. One commenter put it bluntly: "This is my thought too. The idea that it's substantially similar to the cuts of beef in the freezer is disingenuous. The cat died of either known or unknown causes. It wasn't raised and butchered for consumption. And in general, cats are known to sometimes carry some unpleasant parasites and diseases that you generally would not need to worry about in meat raised for human consumption. You wouldn't take the old cow Bessie who died on the field of old age and unknown causes and put her in your freezer, even though it's an animal often bred to eat." OP defended their choice, pointing out that the body was carefully packed and boxed. To them, it was about doing everything they could to preserve the dignity of their beloved pet until the ground was soft enough to say goodbye. Level 2. The placenta that tore a family apart. It was supposed to be preserved as something sacred. Instead, it became the spark that ignited a family feud no one could put out. On Am I the Asshole, one Redditor recounted the moment a fragile bond between sisters collapsed over something most people wouldn't even want to touch. My sister is always intentionally trying to be the odd one out in the family. Recently, she's had her first child and she decided she wanted to have her placenta taken by some woman and dried and treated so she could scatter it like ashes or plant it with a tree or whatever. She considers herself very witchy, which causes a lot of friction. The woman was supposed to come pick it up, but then my mom and her aunties surprised my sister with a whole bunch of frozen meals while she's in the newborn phase, and there wasn't enough room in her deep freeze for all the dishes plus the giant bag of ice and placenta. So my sister texted the woman and she said it could be dropped off early. My mom essentially volunteered me to drop it off since it was on my way home. I picked up my husband on the way because he had a few drinks after work with friends and was being responsible. At first, it seemed like nothing more than an odd errand. But then OP's husband looked inside and saw the frozen organs sitting next to their things. Whatever tolerance he had vanished instantly. According to OP, he was horrified, and not just for hygiene reasons. His faith told him it was wrong, and to him, carrying that organ was inviting something unholy into their lives. He demanded they get rid of it immediately. OP tried to ease the situation by firing off texts to her mom and sister to see if either of them would come pick it up. But with no answer coming, the tension between OP, her husband, and the organ sitting in the back seat continued to build until it reached a breaking point. OP's husband told her flat out either the placenta went or he did. They made the choice to throw the organ out. They thought getting rid of it would ease the tension. Instead, it would cost OP far more than she could have imagined. She's furious and has started making it other people's problem. I know it wasn't the nicest, but it also doesn't seem like that big of a deal. I offered to cover the deposit she put down with the woman who was going to process it, and even got her a gift card to the witch store she likes to get some herbs and stuff to do the ritual she wanted, despite it being against my values. She still claims, even after apologizing, making amends, and covering her losses, I'm an asshole and she won't let me come see my niece and refuses to come to or bring my niece to family events I'm at, which is causing huge problems within the family. She told me to post the situation here, and if it's hormones or sleep deprivation making her overreact, she will let it go. If I'm in the wrong, I don't know what else I can do that I haven't already to make it up to her. Was this really such an asshole thing, even after the amends? While Redditors were horrified by the family fallout, something else about the story alarmed them. As one pointed out, a human organ was not properly disposed of. That's a huge biohazard. You can't just chuck it into a garbage can and drive away. Unless they drove back to the hospital and gave it to them to dispose of safely, they're a huge asshole for that. Another added that in some states it's even criminalized, with fines up to $5,000 or jail time for improper disposal of medical waste. But OP was quick to defend herself, insisting that the commenters had it wrong. She clarified that the organ hadn't gone into a trash can at all, but had been left in its cooler by the roadside, where her brother-in-law eventually retrieved it. By then, though, it had thawed too much to be preserved for the ritual. There were all these strict rules about custody chain and freezing and whatever, so we essentially threw it out, OP admitted. But didn't actually. She can still plant it or whatever she wants to do, just can't have it dried or whatever. OP's response was meant to be reassuring, but it only raised more questions. Because behind the excuses, the fact remained that a sacred organ, one meant to symbolize new life, had ended up discarded on the side of the road like garbage. And that's what makes this story so unsettling. In the end, OP's sister lost her ritual, her trust, and her bond with OP in one brutal stroke. OP was voted the asshole by Redditors, and ended the thread on this note. Obviously, I'm wrong, so whatever. I'll find a way to make it up to her. Level 3. The Trial of Trust. You've probably heard the story of Oedipus, the son cursed to love his mother. But there's a darker side to that myth, one that doesn't get told nearly as often. Jocasta, the mother who clung too tightly to her son. For one pregnant Redditor, the ancient story became terrifyingly real. and the cost of that obsession could not only be her marriage, but her life and the life of her unborn child. I'll keep this as short as possible, OP began. I, 25 female, am pregnant with the baby due in a couple of days. My husband, 25 male, promised that he would be the one to drive me to the hospital and that he will be glued to the phone until birth. He works only 10 minutes from our home and his boss agreed to let him go when the birth happens. The problem is, my mother-in-law, my husband and her have an unhealthy, in my opinion, strong bond, and she is overly involved in our relationship, which has caused many issues in the past. She requires his attention every day. She suggested moving in with us ever since I became pregnant. She also has emergencies whenever we have anniversaries, important occasions like my birthday, etc. As the date is approaching, I became increasingly worried that his mother will have an emergency during birth and I'll have trouble getting to the hospital or will be forced to be alone during. I voiced my concerns and it caused fights between me and them. I even suggested asking my best friend to drive me and keep me company as I'm scared of giving birth, but it was shot down with, "How can't you trust your own husband?" The closer OP's due date crept, the heavier that dread became. So OP decided to put his loyalty to the test. But whatever response she was bracing for, she never imagined what was coming. So I'm not proud of it, but I faked giving birth yesterday. I called my hubby at work, told him it started, and he said he'll be right there. After half an hour, I called him to ask where he was, and he didn't answer. After almost an hour, he called me to say he's at the hospital with his mom because guess what? She's having a medical emergency. Apparently, he called her to tell her I'm giving birth, and she got a heart attack from excitement. He said he'll have to miss my birth and actually asked me to call my friend to drive me and stay with me. I admit, I was very angry and heartbroken, so I told him I wasn't actually giving birth and that it was a test that showed me how he would actually behave versus what he said he would do, and that it proved he would always care for his mother more than his own wife who's carrying his child. He was very angry and even blamed me for his mother's heart attack in that moment. His mom, of course, didn't have a heart attack, but a false alarm. I felt very justified, but now that we talked, I feel guilty. He said he feels manipulated and gaslighted. That just because his mother lied about the emergency doesn't mean I should lie to him. He said that marriage is built on trust, so I have to trust him instead of lying to him to prove a point. He even said that he didn't choose his mother over me, but chose a bigger emergency, and that he knew I could handle getting to the hospital, but his mother needed him more, and that a heart attack is more serious. Just like Oedipus, OP's husband chose his mother over her, and instead of apologizing for doing that, he doubled down. He insisted that the fact OP was right was irrelevant because he didn't know his mother was faking. But that wasn't even the worst thing he did. While refusing to ascribe any blame to his mom, he had no problem blaming the whole thing on OP, saying, "I was just as bad for lying. I feel like I'm going crazy. Am I the asshole?" The comment section quickly picked up on the gaslighting in OP's post. What her husband framed as logic, that a supposed heart attack was the bigger emergency, did not pass the vibe check. One Redditor asked the obvious question, if a heart attack was a bigger emergency, why did he not scold his mother and accuse her of being a manipulative gaslighter like he did his wife? And then came a haunting observation. 10 minutes ago, I would have said there's no good reason to fake giving birth and testing your partner is always a bad idea, but this 100% would have worked out the exact same way when she actually gave birth. She literally might have saved her own life by not trusting her husband. By the end, OP herself seemed drained. Her final words carried more weight than she probably intended. Also, I'm sorry for mostly not replying to anyone. I'm emotionally exhausted. Exhausted, and still tied to a man who had already shown her in the most critical test of loyalty where his heart truly belonged. Blood betrayal twice over. Redditor Disastrous Chapter 57 began her post by making one thing clear. The betrayer was now her ex. And from there, the story only grew more unthinkable. I, 27 female, have 3 children with my now ex, Khan, 29 male. 10 months ago, my sister, 26 female, confessed that she and Khan had slept together the week before, and she said she regretted it and needed us to be okay. She told me it was a mistake and she got caught up in a moment because she had a crush on Khan and she needed me not to hate her for it. That she loved me and wanted us to make things work. Khan didn't even try to deny it. He told me he'd been sleeping around for years and that he slept with my sister more than once. My sister denied it strongly. I broke up with him immediately and told her to get lost. I said I never wanted to see her again and that she disgusted and repulsed me, and I didn't care how bad she felt. I wanted her to feel bad. I wanted her to hurt, and she would never hurt as much as I was right then, so forget about me. I got checked after I broke up with Khan to make sure he didn't leave me anything with all the cheating. I was negative for all STDs, and I'm incredibly thankful for that. With the amount of cheating he talked about, I'm still surprised I didn't catch anything. Whatever you think happened next in this story, I can assure you, does not compare to what unfolded. And, unfortunately, even that wasn't the most disturbing part, because karma did indeed turn out to be a dish served very cold. As OP tells it, she ended up dating Khan because I rejected her, or that was the story she told others. She said she felt guilty and needed some good to come from this because clearly I would never give her the time of day again. And that's true. I swore to myself that I would not forgive her. Even through therapy, I've become more secure in the belief that what she did broke our relationship beyond repair, and regardless of whether it was a one-time, which I don't believe, or a full affair, it was wrong and will never come back from it. I really don't care what happens to her, and if she died tomorrow, I would not grieve or make an appearance at her funeral. Recently, my sister found out Khan had cheated on her, and he didn't only cheat, but he passed along some STDs/STIs. I don't know specifics. I believe she's also waiting to make sure he didn't give her HIV, although I can't say I paid enough attention to know if that was a big concern or just them being cautious. But she thought that experience would make me forgiving of her. She was wrong. She showed up at my place and I shut the door in her face without saying a word. She showed up at her brother's house while I was heading inside and he shooed her, but she told me how sorry she was again and how scared she was and how she needed me. I ignored her and kept going, and our brother told her she wasn't welcome. She tried again, and this time I did respond. I told her I do not care, and if anything, she deserves everything she got after what she did and how stupid she was in the end. She told me she needed me and that she was scared. I told her just when I found out my partner of 8 years and father of my children was cheating and I could have used my sister, only she betrayed me as well by cheating with him. She said it was one time and she would have been there for me, and I told her I didn't want her disgusting self to touch me. Because I said that's how I saw her now, a disgusting backstabber. I told her I don't care if he's given her every STD under the sun because I want nothing more to do with her and she can die in a hole for all I care. I haven't seen her since. Apparently she's very distraught and she's also the topic of gossip in our social circles. She's lost most of our shared friends and a few have shared a similar sentiment to me on her. Many would interpret OP's actions as cold and heartless, but OP knew exactly how she felt about her sister and nothing was going to change that. Their close bond had been forever broken. She ended the thread with the same cold detachment she started it with. I don't feel guilty. I don't even feel bad for her or have any kind of empathy. All OP was interested in was the answer to one question: am I the asshole though? The comments disagreed. As Redditor Keisha Danger put it, I don't even know if that is guilt. I think her sister needs something and that's why she came crawling back. I highly doubt she would have come back if the consequences of her actions hadn't come knocking. I bet she has a long history of this kind of sibling rivalry behavior / personality disorder behavior. Any which way, not the asshole, and I wouldn't take her back if she was the last person on Earth. She had no problem with her part in ruining a family for her nieces and nephews. Of all the horrors shared on Reddit, this was the rare kind that united everyone. Because if there's one thing people agree on, it's that some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Very few things are more disturbing or more unforgivable than blood turning against blood. Level 4. The Poisoned Steam. In this disturbing tale from Reddit's Am I the subreddit, the original poster, a 32-year-old man with the username IcyTomatio9979, recounts how a simple act of house cleaning spiraled into something far more dangerous. Long story short, my, male 32, girlfriend, female 31, and I just moved into an apartment together a few months ago, and I've been slacking on the cleaning. She hasn't really said anything, but I've noticed her saying things under her breath or making some comment during dinner. I'm not a misogynist. I know men gotta clean and stuff too, I just never really did much of it. I mean, I cleaned, of course, just not like my neat freak girlfriend. Anyway, I decided to clean the house before she got home from the gym, but I hadn't finished by the time she got home. Mind you, when she came home and saw what I was doing, she was really happy. I got a big smooch and promise of some fun times after her shower, so naturally I wanted to hurry up and get it done. She hopped in the shower, but I hadn't finished the bathroom yet. Our bathroom is kinda big, so I figured I could sneak in while she was showering, not to be a creep, the shower curtain is dark, you can't even see through it, to get the cleaning done. I do have a tendency to get distracted, so while I was bringing in the stuff to quickly clean the floor, I left my phone playing the podcast I was listening to in the other room. Not thinking, I just quickly mixed together some bleach and vinegar to get it cleaned fast. I know what you're thinking, and yes, I'm an idiot. I figured the vinegar would speed up the process, but I didn't even think about how bad it smelled. Well, after I mixed it, I quickly went out to grab my phone and turn the podcast off when I hear my girlfriend scream. I run back to the bathroom, but the steam was literally burning my eyes. She had the shower so hot, and she comes out, fully naked mind you, yelling at me, calling me an idiot, everything. She dumped the cleaning stuff down the drain and closed the bathroom door, literally freaking out at me. Again, she's butt naked, and we're in the living room at this point with windows pointed at the courtyard. Believe it or not, OP being more concerned about his girlfriend's unclothed body facing the courtyard window than the fact that he had nearly poisoned her is not the worst part of this story. Not even close. Because after she stumbled out of the shower in tears, her skin burning, her throat raw, her body shaking, and fled to the patio, sobbing that she needed time to heal, OP still sat in his car wondering, what the hell did I do to upset her so badly? Am I the asshole? The comments section didn't hold back, and in their bluntness, they revealed just how close this story came to becoming a tragedy. One Redditor put it simply, "You put vinegar and bleach together and filled the room with air that could kill a person. Yes, she should be angry with you. Drive around a little and see if she'll be okay with you when you get home." Another went even further, pointing out the chilling lack of guilt in OP's words. "So, you were careless and negligent. The fact that you lack this much guilt that your question is, am I the asshole for almost killing my girlfriend even though I apologized, is alarming. If I'm looking down at my phone as I walk and push you onto a subway track by accident, would you say, oh, well, it was an accident? You would freak out because I've put you in harm's way." The price of self-preservation. Labor is one of the most urgent medical emergencies there is. Every second counts. Yet in this story, one woman's cry for help was met with a command that will leave you speechless. What started as a normal day at the office became a nightmare she will never forget. By the end, she wasn't just questioning her job, she was questioning whether her child would survive. And that was only the beginning. Posting under the username illsituation6855, OP wrote, "I, 28 female, have been working at my company for 5 years, and until recently, I loved my job. I was 8 months pregnant when this happened, about a month ago, so I started having contractions while at work. Since I was not due yet, I thought it was just Braxton Hicks because they weren't that intense. Just a week before that, I had experienced Braxton Hicks and went to the hospital, but it was a false alarm. This time I was still working when the contractions started in the morning, and I again thought it was Braxton Hicks. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I tried to keep working. Last time I went to the hospital, my boss, John, 45 male, made sarcastic comments about me being overly dramatic and joked about how I should schedule my labor around important meetings. I have social anxiety and tend to take people's crap without pushing back, so I just took it. By noon, the contractions were getting stronger and closer together, and I knew it was real labor. I needed to go to the hospital. I informed John that I was in labor and needed to leave. He rolled his eyes and said, "Just stay for the meeting at 1 p.m. It's crucial and we need you there." I was stunned. I reiterated that I was in active labor and needed to go to the hospital immediately. John snapped back, "It's just a meeting. Sit through it and then you can go. It's not like the baby is gonna pop out right now." Paralyzed by fear of losing her job, OP stayed in that meeting while her body tore itself apart. For those who can't fathom it, labor pains are often compared to the agony of breaking multiple bones at once. And for 2 excruciating hours, she sat there, forced to nod along to inane office chatter while enduring the kind of pain most people couldn't even imagine. By the end of it, I was in so much pain that I could barely walk. I finally left and drove myself to the hospital, where I was admitted immediately. My husband reached 30 to 40 minutes later because he was on the other side of town for a meeting. My daughter was born later that evening, thankfully healthy despite the delay. When I told my husband what had happened, he was furious and insisted we report John to HR. I was hesitant because I didn't want to jeopardize my job, but I agreed it was the right thing to do. HR was appalled and assured me they would handle the situation. John has since been suspended pending an investigation. The real kicker? During the investigation, it came out that John had emailed the entire office while I was in labor, complaining about my lack of commitment and making fun of me for overreacting. He even implied that I was using my pregnancy as an excuse to get out of work. Now my coworkers are pissed at me, saying I overreacted and that I should have just sucked it up for the sake of the company. I even received messages and emails from a few colleagues saying that I've ruined John's career and that he was just doing his job under pressure. One even said that I should have toughed it out like their wife did during her pregnancy. The stress from this whole ordeal has made it difficult to enjoy my first few days with my newborn. I'm constantly second-guessing myself and feeling guilty despite knowing I did what was best for my baby and me. To make matters worse, the interim manager who took over from John is even worse. He made it clear to everyone that he resents my actions and has made my return to work unbearable. Now that my maternity leave is over, I find myself isolated at work. People give me side eyes and whisper about me. During lunch, I'm alone because no one wants to sit with the troublemaker. It feels like high school all over again. I dread going to work each day and facing the hostility and judgment. I never imagined that doing what was right for my health and my baby's well-being would turn my colleagues against me like this. It's gut-wrenching to feel so isolated and vilified for simply standing up for myself and my rights. This disturbing post drew thousands of comments, with most commenters agreeing that OP was not in any way the asshole. But the most recurring theme in all the comments was one thing: lawsuit. Commenters pointed out that her boss's actions were beyond wicked, they were outright life-threatening. Yes, that's one big deal that needs to be in the report because everything they had you do put you and your daughter's life at risk. You're a badass hero for driving yourself to the hospital, but the fact that they delayed labor, that in itself can be deadly in so many ways, and didn't even help you to the hospital, letting you fend for yourself? Please, nail these assholes to the wall with a lawyer for being horrible humans with absolutely no compassion for anyone in this world. The cost of family loyalty. I, 33 male, met my wife, 33 female, in college. It was a long-term physical relationship that turned serious at the end of our senior year. After graduation, I didn't have plans, so I decided to move to her hometown, major southern city. I didn't know anybody, so we were together 24/7 and moved in together within a year. During this time, I met her family a few times. She had a huge extended family where her mom, Sharon, was the matriarch. Her dad died in a workplace accident and her mom got a lot of money. She was smart and invested and is doing well. All of Sharon's siblings and nieces and nephews look to her for advice on all major life decisions. She's paid for school, weddings, and helped start businesses. My wife has 2 brothers who I always got along with. We would hang out independent of my wife a few times a year. We got married after 3 years, and when my son was born, Sharon bought us a house 3 blocks from hers. We had lived in a downtown loft-style apartment, and this was honestly a relief, but with the house came Sharon constantly being in my life. coming in the house unannounced, unsolicited advice, and snide remarks at my expense. Eventually, 18 months later, we had a blow-up fight, and I moved my family across town to an apartment. My wife was pissed, and our relationship has deteriorated. Sharon hates me and has turned most of their family against me. I didn't see or go to any of her family events for over a year. My wife still saw her family, but because I wasn't invited and they were over 30 minutes away, it was much less. Sharon went from seeing her grandson almost every day to once a month, so her hate for me went through the roof. While OP had managed to keep his distance from his mother-in-law's grip, he couldn't avoid her forever. But nothing could have prepared him for what awaited him the moment he stepped foot into her home. What should have been a simple birthday celebration for a child warped almost instantly into something terrifying. And yet, more terrifying than the violence was the truth that the incident revealed. A truth far more painful than anything OP had endured up until that point. The party was at Sharon's house, and if it wasn't my first son's first cousin, 6 months apart, I would have said no. It was tense the moment I walked in the house. Father of birthday boy, brother-in-law, greeted me, but no one else spoke to me. I didn't mind and sat in the corner on my phone. This apparently pissed off Sharon because I was being rude. An argument ensues, and I announce I'm leaving with my son. Sharon said, "You can go, but my grandbaby is staying." At this point, I lost my cool and started cursing her out. I woke up on the front lawn. Apparently, my two brother-in-laws beat the shit out of me in front of my kid. Two of her cousins were helping me up and told me just to leave. I immediately called the police and said I was assaulted and my child was kidnapped. Police came and both brothers were arrested. Sharon lost her shit on the police, and my wife drove up as her mother was being arrested for refusing to release my son. Her mom was eventually released, but her brothers were arraigned on assault charges. The father of the birthday boy had an charge from college, so he's facing some serious consequences. My wife is mad at everyone, but asked me to drop the charges. I not only refused, but got restraining orders for all three of them. Her mother isn't allowed to be near our kid, and her brothers have court dates early next year. Last month, she moved out of the house. We are now headed for divorce. Yesterday, she came with one last offer for us to move cities and start over, but only if I dropped the charges on her brothers and removed the restraining order on her mom. I told her I would think about it, but I think I would rather get divorced. I honestly want to keep my family, but I don't believe she'll ever abandon her family for me. If I drop charges now, I doubt I can bring them back later. Am I the asshole for not trying to save my family? As OP's story spread across Reddit, the horror of what he described struck a nerve. But his nightmare wasn't over. The fallout seeped off Reddit and back into his real life. His wife's cousin reached out after seeing the viral post demanding he add context to soften how her family was being portrayed. And so OP did, but instead of easing the horror, the details he added only deepened it. I don't think anyone is evil in this situation. Everyone loves Sharon and her advice except me. She's not a mean person, but we're polar opposites in many ways. My wife is the baby and only girl, so I'm sure that has a lot to do with our conflict. Sharon losing her shit in the police was uncharacteristic, and even I was surprised. My wife is a great mom and partner, but her inability to be independent of her mom's influence is our issue. She's mad at her brothers and isn't talking to either. She's also mad at her mom for starting the argument and refusing to release our son. She's just trying to find a middle ground. I genuinely think she hopes a fresh start can save our marriage. Until we moved into that house, I would say our relationship was good. As far as her brothers and the assault, I remember the first hit, but I was dazed immediately. The last thing I remember was flailing like a child while getting hit a few more times. What I don't remember is my kids screaming to stop hitting my daddy and them picking me up and dropping me on the lawn like trash. I have to acknowledge that my pride hurt more than my bruises. I genuinely liked both her brothers, and to be fair, "F you" and "bitch" came out of my mouth when I cursed out Sharon. I'm not 100% innocent. This is the South, so the police even said, "What did you expect to happen?" I don't know if I stopped pursuing this, it would continue or not. Reddit wasn't fooled. The comment section lit up with outrage, not at OP, but at the family he was still defending. Yep, 100% the cousin sucks. This whole family is f***ing unhinged, and the cousin coming here, acting like there's some reasonable excuse for beating a father unconscious in front of his son? Absolutely deplorable. Another cut through the rationalizations with cold clarity. The edit makes absolutely nothing better. They literally beat him in front of a child while the child said to stop, and Sharon held the child hostage. No decent person would ever do that. This family is psycho and belongs in jail. And perhaps the most chilling advice of all, OP, please pretend you dropped the charges and see how quickly your wife changes her tune. Also, please make sure you have a camera in place from now on. Level 5. The Poolside Retribution. There's something unsettling about how quickly children can mirror the darkest parts of adulthood. Most of the time, their anger fades as quickly as it sparks, but sometimes it doesn't. And Redditor Throwaway Bunch of Numbers found that out the hard way. OP began with a little background on her family. We have 2 children, a daughter who's 7 and a son who is 4. My daughter loves her little brother and is quite protective of him, which I've always liked, at least until now. We recently had a family gathering at my parents' house. I don't get along with my sisters because they've raised their children in the way that they believe they can annoy others and get away with it because they won't get punished. That's why, especially my 6-year-old nephew, who likes to bother my son, whenever he does it, we immediately leave the meetings. We attended this last meeting because my father was already retiring from his job and wanted to celebrate the beginning of his retirement with a family reunion. My husband is the one who usually takes care of my son because when my husband is with him, my nephew doesn't dare approach him. But that time my husband had a work meeting and couldn't go. My daughter, anyway, insisted that she would take care of her brother, so we ended up going. Now my parents have 2 medium-sized swimming pools, one for children and one for adults. It turns out that my nephew threw my son into the adult pool. As soon as I realized, I took him out and cleaned him. My son was crying and I was watching red, but at least my son was fine. But for her daughter, the relief wasn't enough. Before OP could even confront her sister about her son, a scream tore across the yard. Every head turned toward the children's pool where OP's 7-year-old daughter was no longer simply protecting her brother, she was punishing the boy who had hurt him. What OP and the rest of the family saw sent chills down their spines. It was my daughter sinking my nephew's face in the water of the children's pool and putting all her weight on top of him so that he couldn't get up. Almost all of us had to intervene to be able to separate them. I couldn't believe that a 7-year-old girl could have so much strength, but not even my 2 sisters and I could make her let go of my nephew. When we managed to separate them, my nephew began to vomit water, throw it out of his nose, and cry. My daughter also cried while hugging her brother, and I hugging both of them. When everything calmed down between them, the screams began between my sister and me. My sister wanted to hit my daughter, and I got in the way. Luckily, nothing happened. In the end, we separated, and each of us returned home. It was worth clarifying that I did not punish my daughter for what she did, and I do not plan to do so. She was only defending her brother, but the problem is that my sisters both want my daughter to apologize to my nephew, and that I should punish her in front of them to let them know that kind of violence is not okay, which I refuse to do. My parents also think that my daughter went a little too far. The only person who is on my side now is my husband, saying that he would have done the same if he had been in my daughter's place. OP stood her ground. To her, it was simple. Her child had defended her brother. But to the outside world, the story struck a far darker chord. While several commenters were horrified by the violence between children, they were more unsettled by the silence of the adults who allowed it to escalate in the first place. One pointed out the obvious danger. How was a 4-year-old and 6-year-old left alone near water long enough that gave them time to be pushed into the water and then a 7-year-old the chance to try to drown a 6-year-old in water? How do you not know that drowning is the #1 cause of death in children under 14? Another echoed the same concern. OP, your daughter needs a good talking to about how far is too far. She wasn't just trying to scare him, she was going to make sure he never did it again. She probably succeeded in warning him off for good, but her endgame was too extreme. Bottom line, 4, 6, and 7-year-olds shouldn't be unattended near water. Level 6. The Surrogate Delusion. Obsession feeds like a parasite. It grows quietly until it threatens to consume everything. For one Redditor, posting on the Am I the Apple subreddit, her pregnancy became the focal point. What followed was a descent into a nightmare where control, identity, and even motherhood itself were ripped from her hands. OP started her story. I, 29 female, dated a guy, Joe, 30 male, for 3 months before he left me to go back to his ex, Kim, 30 female. Right after we broke up, I found out I was pregnant, and now I'm at 24 weeks. I let him know, and he was ecstatic. Turns out his girlfriend had fertility issues and would likely never be able to get pregnant naturally, and he's always wanted to be a father. Getting back together was out of the question for both of us, so he's still with his girlfriend. Joe was only allowed at the initial appointment because of COVID-19, and we found out I was having twins. According to Joe, when he told Kim, she had a mental breakdown about her infertility and wanted to talk to me. I met them at their house, and Kim stated that she wanted to be involved in my pregnancy because she would eventually be the children's stepmother. She started telling me that I needed to do a home birth, that I needed to formula feed so that they could have the babies half of the week, that she wanted 1 boy and 1 girl, and that she wanted the kid to call her mama since they would be calling me mommy. I shut her down and said I would make the best choices for my children and my body and left. But that obsession only escalated. What began as a few invasive comments turned into full-on interference, each step crossing lines OP never imagined she'd have to defend. It was no longer just about advice or opinions from a future stepmother. And the deeper Kim sank into her delusion, the more it felt like OP's pregnancy wasn't hers anymore. The breaking point came suddenly in a single furious moment when OP finally pushed back in public. What followed was a spiral so unsettling that OP was left questioning everything. Kim continued to be overbearing and texting me every day about my eating habits, exercise habits, and bitching about how her job wouldn't let her take maternity leave. At the virtual genetics counseling appointment she attended instead of Joe and took over the whole meeting trying to talk about her family history, which wasn't relevant. When it came time for my 20-week level 2 scan, they allowed me 1 guest, and Joe suggested I take Kim instead of him, which I refused to do. Joe did end up coming, and he found out the gender because I wanted to keep it a surprise for me so we could throw a gender reveal party. I put a pregnancy announcement on my social media, and then she put up an announcement saying they were expecting twins the non-traditional way and how blessed she was. I was irritated, but I kept my mouth shut. Then she threw a gender reveal party and posted it on social media. I wasn't even invited. She also announced that she's having a baby shower. I commented on her posts and told her to stop treating me like a surrogate, that the kids weren't hers, and that Joe didn't have any claim or custody of the kids until they are born. I then called Joe and reiterated all of this and stated that I would not be seeing either of them until we went to family court, and that my mother would be my birthing partner. He and Kim and some of her friends and family are saying I'm an asshole, and her mother even called and insisted I give her one of my babies like this is the Parent Trap. So, am I the asshole? When OP shared her story on Reddit, the response was clear. OP was not the asshole. But what terrified readers most wasn't the obsession and the entitlement Kim was displaying. It was the inevitability of it all. Everyone could see what was coming. Many commenters urged OP to act fast, get a lawyer, move out of the state or even the country, anything to keep Kim's hands off the babies. But perhaps the most terrifying part is the parallel that commenters drew to other terrifying cases on Reddit. I remember a post where OP had surgery to become a woman. Her boyfriend said he loved her, but he wanted to get another woman pregnant. He wanted to marry her after taking the baby. Another commenter connected the case to Lisa Montgomery, a woman so consumed by her obsession with motherhood that she ended the life of a pregnant stranger and cut the baby from her womb. For many readers, the line between OP's reality and those cases felt too thin. To those concerns, OP responded with a single line. "I'm definitely getting a lawyer ASAP. Y'all have scared the shit out of me, but I'm happy you did." And that's when the most haunting possibility began to take shape. That maybe OP had been a pawn all along, caught in a plan she never consented to. A plan where her body, her pregnancy, her children were tools to make someone else happy. OP's update made that fear feel all too real. She admitted she never even considered this could have been orchestrated, that Joe and Kim may have known exactly what they were doing. By the time the thought even crossed her mind, the obsession had already broken through every boundary. On Friday, I did get a lawyer, and they let me know in my state there was nothing I could do as far as custody before the babies are born, so I will be leaving my state soon to ensure that this isn't my baby's home state and I can't be charged with anything. However, someone sent this post to Kim, and she came to my job, damaged my car, and broke a bunch of office windows. I work with kids, so she was arrested for not just the criminal damage and trespassing, but also child endangerment, so hopefully that works in my favor. Also, if Joe did it on purpose, I don't think Kim knew because she was screaming at me about how I stole her life and everything I had was supposed to be hers. Even after the arrests, OP moving away and getting a restraining order against both Kim and Joe, OP admitted the harassment followed her. It's a reminder that once someone decides your life belongs to them, escape isn't always the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a different kind of nightmare. The daughter he shouldn't desire. With most Am I the posts, the conflict usually comes down to misunderstandings, petty arguments, or family drama that, while painful, has some kind of middle ground. But every so often, a story appears that makes you wonder how someone could think there's even a question. This is one of those stories, and at its center is a choice that most parents would never dare to make. A choice that left readers horrified. I, 55 female, have been married to my husband and my daughter's stepdad, 63 male, for 4 years. My 23-year-old daughter and I have a complicated relationship. She has been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. She has a lot of trauma from watching me and my husband's horrible marriage go down and was bullied in school. When she told me she was being bullied by peers, my view that all children are innocents really tied my hands because I told her that if I said anything to them, I would be an adult harassing a child. She has blamed me for that ever since, and keeps referring to this one time where the kids at school called her trash due to the fact that she wasn't taking care of her hygiene due to depression. Part, not all, of my response was telling her to take a shower, and I bought her new clothes. The bullying finally ended with an expulsion and a suspension for the ringleaders. She still throws the fact that a school clinic volunteer told her that if she was their kid, she'd have permission to punch back if administrators didn't do anything. I thought that having her live with me while she finishes school and gets a job would help her heal some childhood wounds if my second husband and I modeled a healthy relationship. However, my daughter doesn't get along with my husband. She's a very introverted, creative person who likes immersing herself in escapism, so she'd get annoyed if she was sitting eating alone and my husband would sit across from her and eat, saying she ate later so she could eat alone. However, my husband started acting distant from me, and my daughter complained that his eyes lingered for too long. She got very angry and there was a lot of shouting and slamming of doors, and finally my husband admitted he's attracted to her and it's hard to be around her all day. Said she was a walking temptation and said that's why he was avoiding sex with me. I was so upset to hear this. I don't blame my daughter for this, but at the same time the situation has become unbearable. Something would have to give, and I couldn't collect my thoughts with both of them still being in the house. Up until this point in the story, many things could still be rationalized. Parenting is difficult, and parents don't often do the right things despite having the best intentions. OP admitted the mistakes she made in the past and seemed to want to make amends now. But then came the moment everything shifted. Faced with a husband who was attracted to her daughter, OP made a choice most parents wouldn't. And what she did next chilled readers to their core. I gave my daughter money to stay in an extended stay hotel and asked her to utilize her college's emergency financial and housing resources they have for students in need. She responded by storming out and telling my ex, who is now circling social media using it to paint me as the villain of all villains. I'm not abandoning my daughter. She qualifies for those resources anyway since my ex is unemployed and we're in substantial debt. I just need time to process the situation and don't want to leave my house to stay with my daughter when I have a marriage to figure out whether or not to save. Am I the asshole? When OP shared this online, readers didn't see a mother figuring things out. What they saw was a woman who had chosen herself over her child, and not for the first time. The outrage was merciless. With over 10,000 comments, OP was overwhelmingly voted the asshole. To most, the question wasn't why she made her daughter leave, but how she could ever have considered saving her marriage at all. But the most horrifying part? Commenters pointed out that one of the key risk factors for developing dissociative identity disorder is disorganized attachment to a primary caregiver, which meant OP's neglect and emotional abandonment may have been at the root of her daughter's disorder. The damage didn't start with the husband's confession. It started years before. One commenter put it bluntly. Right? I keep seeing her say that her first marriage failing was what did the damage, but I gotta say, having a mom not care about your depression being bad enough to make you not clean yourself, any more than buying you new clothes and telling you to take a shower, would do a whole lot worse. Like, bitch, it's your job as a parent to figure out why your daughter is so depressed instead of declaring it from your marriage and throwing your hands up. First red flag of many, many red flags. Hope this lady doesn't have any more kids. However, what makes this post even more terrifying is how common OP's behavior is. Another Redditor replied with her own experience of a mother who didn't care enough. I vividly remember one time when I was beat within an inch of my life for getting a B on a pop math quiz. I still now know the 7 tables backwards. My mom sort of popped her head in the room while I was lying on the floor, broken and bleeding with my green cat pajamas shredded. My dad walking around to the other side of the canopy bed, he just threw me through to continue beating me up. And she said, "Charlie, you're gonna kill her," and then popped her head out of the room and left him to it. The beating only continued for another few minutes, and then I had special hiding spots around the house and in the woods where I would go to hide to collect myself because crying would mean another beating. I'll give you something to cry about. If you want more disturbing icebergs, check out our most disturbing Reddit encounters iceberg.